This is an incredible and adventurous new season on Run the World. Where do we pick up with Sandy?
She is thinking that she is coming back from this girls' trip that was the, bachelorette party that was supposed to be Whitney's um bachelorette party, but she didn't end up going on because everything blows up. And they come back from Tulum and she's thinking she's going into like having everything all figured out with her and Matthew and just sort of settling into this new role as like stepmom. And she comes back home and unbeknownst to her, like Amari's real mom is there, and it just creates tension between her and Matthew because he didn't tell her. Once again, he's like sort of putting her in a shitty situation without, and she's getting like all this attention within the academic sphere finally, and sort of finding her way with Baptiste. And it's just like they're butting heads, but like in a very, I don't want to say passive aggressive, but it's subtle. It's a subtle headbutt.
If there is such a thing.
Right.
It's so interesting that she has so much going on her plate, that she's able to balance her friendship. Is she able to balance her relationship? Is she able to balance her career? Will we see her faltering at all, stumbling a little bit with balancing all of these aspects?
Yeah, you will definitely see her stumbling and faltering. And I think anytime that you're trying to, like you said, balance work, career, and love and family, and you're trying to do all of these things at, a level of admirability, like you're doing them in a way that's ambitious and you're really trying to cover all the bases. You're going to stumble, you're going to fall, you're going to make mistakes. She definitely gets into a situation that in her relationship that is it makes her have to make a very serious decision. Like she can't just like coast anymore. I think the things that were bothering her, that again, like I said, were a subtle headbutt, they come to an explosion. And so when things explode, you have to address them. And then in terms of her career, it's really exciting because I feel like last season you really saw her kind of definitely taking the back seat a bit and struggling in that realm too, not only trying to like have work and love in the same space, but not knowing exactly if being in academia is the only thing she wants, like just coasting until she gets tenure. So she gets an opportunity this season to have her voice amplified and be heard, and it sends her down a completely different path in her career, which was very exciting for me to play.
And maybe something Sandy didn't expect for herself as well, right? I
A
mean,
100%.
she's very rigid sometimes when it comes to her ambitions. So this will be interesting to see how she manages it all, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that people think when you're in your 30s, you're supposed to have everything all figured out. And, you're supposed, or at least you're supposed to have those life marks ticked off, like
Right?
supposed to have found the guy and started the family and have the career at a certain place where it's like, I'm not coasting, but like you have it figured out.
Right.
And I think TV does a very good job in film of glamorizing figuring it out in your 20s. But what people don't realize is we're doing things later and later in life. Now we're living longer, women
Exactly.
are doing so many things that they may not have done 50, 60 years ago. And so therefore those life marks get ticked off a little bit later. And so it's very normal. I mean, even my parents did it a little bit later. My mom did things a little bit later in terms of having kids and starting a family and all of that. So I think it's great because our show glamorizes that in a way that makes you feel less alone. Like if I don't have
Good.
everything
Yeah,
perfectly
right.
figured out, that's okay. And it makes you feel less alone and it makes you feel seen. And yeah, I think that's really important.
It's interesting because I was watching recently these matchmaking shows that they have on Netflix, and they're trying to explain to people that women are getting married later in life. It's right now they're focused on their career, and then they'll worry about managing a family, a life outside of the office because they want to have their own stability before they venture into a family life. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It was interesting that the matchmakers were like, it's so different than 20 years ago. It's they were the ones having a bit of trouble adjusting to this new form of feminism where
Yeah,
women are doing for themselves first.
as they should, as they very well should. So I'm glad that, we're we're normalizing that on our show.
Well, I love the beautiful friendship all of you share. Will we be seeing Sandy spend more time with maybe one friend more this season? I know Amber's character is just sort of living her best life, I guess, is really what she's doing right now.
Yeah.
Where do we see their friendship stand?
You definitely see more one-on-ones with Sandy, with both Renee and Whitney. And you definitely see Sandy doing her like hype woman, truth teller thing. It was fun this season because they actually really did put the three of us together almost all the time. So we filmed together constantly. It was actually much more rare this season to have one-on-ones, which I just think the three of us have such a fun dynamic, and we have more fun on set when we're together, and it's fun to just like have those moments. But there is, I think, even in, is it episode, maybe it's the next episode, you see a really fun moment between Sandy and Renee in episode 202, where Sandy's like about to get hot and heavy with Matthew, and she drops everything because Renee sends an SOS and goes over there to save the day and, you know, hype her up so that she can avoid a spiral. You know, it's that admirable female friendship that we're portraying. And again, like I think storytelling is so powerful. It's like we often see women going at each other's throats and like being catty and competitive, and we're not doing that on our show. And I love that, and I hope it encourages people to seek those friendships out in their lives, you know.
Right. It's not girl versus girl. It's I support you 100%. You need me. This is our friendship first, you know? It's a
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful arc that this show has as far as the women go, especially. But I have to ask you about Sandy and Matthew because they're a significant relationship too. And what were your thoughts, or maybe did you talk to even Stephen Bishop about how their arc as a couple will be playing out when you first read the scripts for season
uh
two?
I didn't talk to Steven about it as much as I talked to Rochelle, our showrunner, our amazing showrunner, Rochelle, um, for season two, in terms of where I saw the character going and where she saw the character going, and just collaborating on that like sort of shared vision for season two in terms of where Matthew and Sandy were going. I definitely had conversations with just where we wanted to take it. It was like a very collaborative sort of pre-conversation before they even started writing officially for season two, which was awesome. And I think there was a mutual frustration, not only mine but the viewers, that were sort of, you know, Twitter is very powerful, and you get to hear feedback, and of course social media in general. But I just think, and me as an actor felt like Sandy was making a lot of compromises in season one that kind of felt frustrating. Like she's young, she's ambitious, she's smart. She's very much was trying to is trying to play a role to like to not only for Steven to be like his you know, like wife but not wife, and also like mother but not mother. And it comes with a lot of, as much as she loves both Amari, sacrifice. um I think she had those moments of feeling taken for granted in season one, you know, like she's like, I'm trying to do ambitious things with my career too. I don't think you realize how much I'm giving up to make this work. Doing it, it's still a sacrifice. And I think, you know, it was something we talked about at length, like where do we go with this? So
Good.
I was definitely a part of that conversation. Mm-hmm.
Good. I'm glad that you have input in the arcs of how things go and maybe understanding a little bit about more the relationships in Sandy's life and the trajectory for them.
Yeah.
You touched on it a bit. The fans are very vocal. This is such a powerful and quick fan favorite series. Maybe you and I talked about it a little bit too, that it's because people, or women mostly, find themselves reflected so well in these characters. Is that the feedback you received from season one?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of, I've never been a part of anything where I had people come up to me on the street, and not just women, men even, and just be like, your show makes me feel seen, it makes me feel represented. And I think because the writing is so intelligent, and obviously, you know, you're telling the story of three Black women in Harlem, and Starz did a very good job of employing across the board behind the camera, as you know, women as directors, women, Black women as like the writers, showrunners, creators, you know, executives across the board. So it just feels like our authentically, but then it's also crossed, you know, of course, that racial barrier. And because it is done so well, I think people just relate to them because they're complex characters, women, you know, vulnerable and strong and funny and fall on our face. It just feels universal. And so I've had all kinds of people come up to me and say that. And I don't know, you know, there's what more can you ask for than to make people feel seen and heard and represented?
It must be completely fulfilling for you professionally and personally that this is so well received and that people do resonate with it. And you and I talked about there are real world examples of how these women are representing 2023 women out in the world. So I think it's such a beautiful series that touches on so many topical issues as well. And that's why I think it's also a fast fan favorite series. um Here we are just jumping into season 2 now, so we have our fingers crossed. Is there an episode that is maybe one you're more excited for fans to see, or is it just you're so excited for the season to be out finally and people get to explore the entire season 2?
I mean, they're all great. I think one after the other, they're just drama, better laughs, all of that. But for me personally, for my character, there's some really cool stuff that I think happens in 203. She goes into like a debate of sorts, and it's the beginning of her finding her voice and taking like a completely different path with her career and in a way her life. And so I just think you see a different side of her that's people have really that have worked on the show have told me like this is one of my favorite scenes to write. This is one of my favorite scenes to film. Our showrunner said that to me. So I feel the same way. So I'm excited for that one. I think it's either 203 or 204. I can't remember. And I also love the therapy episodes. Those are always so. I
Cathartic,
think
probably both both on screen and off for you.
yeah, and this year we have Cree Summers playing our therapist. We had Rosie O'Donnell last year, but Cree Summers came in this year, and she just is such a mother-like, sort of like, you know, ethereal spiritual presence. I had moments backstage, not backstage, but like before we started filming with her, where I was having like a full-on therapy session with her about my own life, and I was like just going off, and she's just like yes, and like giving me all this like advice, you know. She just has that mother earth energy, and it just is, it was a perfect, it's perfect casting, and obviously I'm a huge fan. So but the therapy episodes are great because, you know, I think there can be some stigma around therapy, and again, it's another beautiful sort of depiction of what therapy can do for you. You know, in the context of our show, it's funny because the three of us share the same therapist. So we're all kind of caught up on each other's lives in a way. Of course, can't disclose everything, but the way that she leads us to the conclusions about the things that we need to work through or make decisions about, again, it's just very smart and beautifully acted. And I love this therapy episode even more than I love the therapy episode we did last season. So that one's one to watch as well.
Oh my goodness. Such a great series for so many of us to watch. Have you been busy working on any other projects, or does Run the World tend to take up most of your time?
We've been doing a lot of PR lately. So there's a couple things that are coming up that I'm excited about. But honestly, this has been it right now. It's I'm always writing. I want to start directing, um, contemplating doing more theater, because that's where I started. So that.
What would you like to say then to everyone who are fans and supporters of the wonderful work you do, whether it's on this series or your writing? And hopefully, we'll be seeing you behind the camera soon here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did shadow on my show, which was great. I shadowed Nastra in Dubai. Yeah, and she did directed 2 episodes. I shadowed one, and I've shadowed before some other great directors in Hollywood on some great TV shows. So, and I've written and directed my own thing as well. So I guess I would say, keep an eye out. Obviously, follow me on Instagram at Corbin Reid. I always like update stuff I'm working on there. So that's a good way to sort of stay in touch. And yeah, that's pretty much it.